Hello, pumpkins! I have been looking forward to tonight all day. So we have a special guest tonight. We have Lisa Boswell, who is Scotland's top tarot reader. And she will be joining us in just a few moments. Hello, Shermare. And of course, we've got the Beagle joining us tonight. Oh, I know, honey. Okay. How are you doing, Shermare? Oh, my handsome boy. He is such a cutie. Drop it. He's got a shoe. When he was tiny, he'd chew shoes, and now he just like brings me a shoe when he wants to go out. Because he's like, here, Mom, put this on. You wear this when we go out. So after this stream, it will be late. But yeah, I'll take him for his long one. Had a nap beforehand. Good. I'm glad notifications seem to be working. What do you have now? Oh, goodness. Like, how do I ignore this face? How do I ignore that face? Like, oh, so cute. No, we are not going to play right now. I don't want to have to give him a squirt, but I might have to give him a squirt. I just feel so badly when I give him a squirt. Because, like, and then I think about, like, if you did it to a kid, how would that be? Merlin, off. Okay, hi, Lisa. Okay, I will send you an invite. I've done this before. Sure I can do it again? All right, so copied to clipboard. And then... okay. Oh, that won't work. Okay. So I'm just going to do that through the way I did it before. So I'm going to send you the link on Messenger. Just because my computer's a pain in the butt. It's so slow. I'm going to get my old one fixed soon. It'll happen. Okay, here it is. All right, if you click on that link that I just sent you through Messenger, that should be able to open up the chat. Or allow me to add you. It should work. So I shouldn't groom myself on the camera, but my eyeshadow was, my eyeliner was a bit messed up. Merlin got to play with his friend Bo today. They went and had a doggy date. I went and knit with my friend Lisa, my other friend Lisa. I have a few friends named Lisa, and I have a sister named Lisa as well. But today we have Lisa Boswell as a guest. I can hear him into something. So I'm just going to block off the kitchen. I will be right back. Out of there. Out of there, baby boy. That is not for doggies. There we go. Oh, okay. Stream.
Right. 2 seconds, I need to fix my setup.
Okay.
Right, is it better, first of all, right, I need to ask you this, is it better if I'm like landscape or portrait?
This is perfect.
Right, that's fine. Because I done an interview last night, right? And no, it wasn't, what day is it? It was on like Wednesday or something, right? And I'd done it in like portrait, and I thought to myself, should I have done it different? Like, it just really fucked me up mentally.
Yeah. So I have another or I have a if I can get my words out. I have a subscriber from Scotland as well, and I gave her the link to this. Her name's Julie, so hopefully she'll be able to show up. And I kind of said that she does an American, like I'm Canadian, so I hear a difference in Canadian to American accent, but she does an American accent, and it's the only way I can understand her because she has a very thick Scottish accent. So I said that she should come on so she could be like the Scottish to Canadian translator.
Yeah.
So, and another little thing I should let you know, because my computer has like no RAM, sometimes there's a lag, and it seems like I'm interrupting you, but I'm not interrupting you. It's just that, yeah, it takes a bit to catch up. Hey, Marissa. Well, Shamir got the notification, so I don't know if it's everybody. Oh, what? Okay. Nope, that is not for dog. One moment. That is not for doggies. Where are your toys? Where are your toys? Where's your bone? There's your bone. Good boy. I have the most chill dog all day, and then as soon as I hit the camera, he's all over me, and it's oy.
Sorry, my phone went off because the thing touched the emergency mode.
So tell us about your new book.
I wrote my book, The Modern Oracle, last year. It was meant to be published at the start of this year, but then because of the pandemic and stuff, it had to get published now. It's not out in the US yet, but it'll be out in the US either at the end of this month or at the start of October, because again with the pandemic we had like bother with printing and stuff like that. Yeah. So my book is called The Modern Oracle, and it's about different systems of fortune telling and how you can apply them to your life. So we look at like tarot and Lenormand, mostly Romanesque systems of divination as well, like dream interpretations, teacup interpretations, palmistry, all different things. So yeah, quite a lot.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to that for sure. Mm-hmm. And when it's out, let me know, because I will. I'll give a link to my subscribers, and then hopefully we can get the information out about that. Yeah. So we're talking today about developing one's intuition, and I think this is something that anyone can learn to develop their intuition. And I would love to hear your story about how you got into reading tarot, how you got into. Now, I personally don't use the word psychic. I know a lot of people do, but how you ended up becoming a highly intuitive person, and how that impacted your life.
Well, when I was younger, my older sister read tarot, and she used to have her own tarot deck. So my family's Romanesque, so they're quite into like fortune telling and stuff like that. My mum wasn't a fortune teller or anything like that, but a lot of my granddad's family were, and they lived in the yard next to my house when I was younger. So I was always like round about, like say like my great granny and like my granddad's sisters and stuff like that. And I think that's sort of where my older sister got this idea to become like a tarot reader or whatever. How she ended up focusing on tarot in particular, she wanted to learn fortune telling like the same as like my aunts and stuff like that. But when we were younger, there used to be this magazine called Sugar Magazine, and every Halloween they used to run like specials about like witchy kind of things and stuff. Okay. It was aimed at like pre-teens, but like this is like a child's magazine. And my older sister had read about tarot, and she got like really interested in it, and she wanted a tarot deck. So my mum had went and bought her a tarot deck, and I was around about the age of 7 at the time, and I became really infatuated with this tarot deck. Like, it was just like this really strong calling that I had, and I just really, really wanted to use her deck. So then I started like stealing her deck and stuff. I would like go into her room and be like, well, I'm gonna steal this tarot deck, and I'd done that for ages. And then eventually she just sort of let me get on with it. And at first she was quite pissed off, but then eventually she just let me get on with it and let me like use her cards and stuff like that. And then when I got a little bit older, maybe about 10, I started saying to my mum, I was like, listen, like, I want my own cards. I don't want to have to rely on her, you know, like holding them against me or whatever. So then my mum had decided that she would purchase me my own deck, and then that was it. And then after that, I'd started other systems of divination as well, like crystal ball reading, dream interpretation. I learned Lenormand as an adult. Yeah, and that's basically how I started fortune telling.
No, I haven't. I have a Lenormand deck. I have Ciro Marchetti's Reverie. Is it Gilded Reverie? But I haven't learned yet. And I know you talk a lot about Lenormand, and Jenna Matlin, I'm friends with her as well. She talks about Lenormand and how accurate it can be. So not everyone is going to be familiar with what Lenormand is. So could you let my again, words hard. If you could talk to my audience about Lenormand and what that is, and the difference between Lenormand and tarot.
So Lenormand is a 36 card system, and it's read by interpreting, combining cards together. So you would with tarot, right, you can pull a card and be like, right, this is what the Ace of Cups means or whatever. Lenormand cards aren't read that way. They're read by combining like two cards together. So instead of saying, oh, there's a new love coming into your life, it would be like, say, the heart card combined with the rider could represent like a new lover coming into your life. So and also with Lenormand, there's not as many card spreads. There's generally accepted that there's like 3 traditional card spreads, and people tend not to deviate between from that. So you can either read with like only 2 cards by just pulling 2 cards, or you can read with all 36 cards in like a big grand tableau spread. But the reason why I'd started learning Lenormand, actually, it's quite funny. I was performing a professional reading. This is back in like, it was like 2014 or something like that. And tarot stopped working for me, like in the middle of a professional reading. I just like stopped for some reason, right? Just lost the ability to read tarot. And I'm sitting there, and then, do you know what I mean? I've been reading my entire life. So I'm like, fuck, because that never happened to me before. And I wouldn't mind the reading was bad enough as what it was, but I was like, because I was reading someone who was quite skeptical, do you know what I mean? And
yeah, so like, your was on.
Yeah, and she was already in a bad mood at me, because this sounds really weird, right? But one of the reasons why she wanted me to come there was because she had fish that kept on disappearing, right? And she wanted me to tell her why it was that they were disappearing. And straight away, I'm like, you've got a cat, and the cat's eating the fish. Now, the cat wasn't in the house, right, at the time that I was there, but I knew. I was like, you've got a cat that's eating the fish. And then she's like, no, my cat wouldn't do that. And I'm like, no, trust me, like, that cat's eating the fish. But she was adamant. She's like, no, they're just disappearing. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, like, the cat is. So she was already a bit pissed at me, is what it was. Do you know what I mean? I'm like talking shit about her cat. But yeah, so I'm sitting there and I'm like, fuck. And then what had happened was that I was being interviewed for a job, like, to read tarot. Well, just to basically tell fortunes at a shop through in Edinburgh. And she'd invited me, and she was like, oh, you need to come for like a test reading and stuff like that. So then I'm like, all right. And then I'm like, fuck, what am I going to do, right? Because I knew that I had this like issue and stuff like that. So I started thinking about like my other like systems of divination, and sometimes there's some styles of divination that isn't really appropriate for like a test reading. Say something like a dream interpretation or something like that. It wasn't what they were looking for. Basically, the shop wanted me to do like fortune telling, like traditional, like Romany style, like predictive readings and stuff like that. And I knew that, so I'm not going to go through there and be like, oh, well, I need to wait till someone comes with a dream in that. Yeah, it was just like, no, whatever. So I just says, right, get on the internet. And I was like, just looking through like the systems of divination and stuff. Nothing came up. And then I was on Facebook, just sort of like wasting time. And it just so happened that like Lenormand is like came up on my newsfeed. I think someone added me to a group, right? And I absolutely hate that shit, right? But this time I'm sort of like, oh, like thank fuck. So I'm seeing all this detail these people are getting in this reading, and I'm like, right, like, you know what I mean? And then I'm like, right, I'm going to look into this system of divination. And I did. And I actually learned Lenormand in only 2 days, right? So I'd ordered a deck off of Amazon, paid £8 for next day delivery. It came and it was the wrong fucking deck, right? So by now I've only got like 1 day to go, right? So I order this other deck, £8 delivery again, right? So I'm going to the reading, right? I'm en route to the reading, and I'm like, right, I'm just going to take my tarot cards and wait, like, fuck it, right? So I'm walking down the path, and here comes the delivery man with my Amazon box saying, I'm like, give it to me, I've got a meeting, right? So wrestle it off this man and all that, right? And do you know what, right? I was brought up in quite a rough area, right? So the Amazon man's like, whoa, you know. So I go through to Edinburgh, and I'd actually took the shrink wrap off on the bus, man, right? Like most people think that's unethical, right? Now here's the thing, right? A lot of people are like, they have these things like, oh, you should be reading like a system of divination for like so long before like you're performing a reading or whatever.
Yeah.
And I used to think that too, man, right? But you know what? There's always exceptions. Do you know what I mean? Like nowadays, I'm not big on ethics or anything like that, because if I say I have an ethic or if I think I have an ethic, it's always fucking tested. Do you know what I mean? Right? So I stay away from all that shit, man, right? Because I'm like, someone's going to pop up and test me, right? So anyways, right? So I'm en route through this reading, took the shrink wrap off in the bus, and I performed the reading. And this reading was like fucking epic, man, right? It was like one of the best readings I've ever performed. And even she was like, holy shit, like that was like really good and stuff, eh? And I'd got the job. And she says to me when I was leaving, she's like, so how long have you been reading cards for? And I have this thing, right, that I can't lie, right? You know, like it's burning inside me. I can feel like my ancestral spirits are like, you're a fucking liar. Do you know what I mean? Anytime I'm lying, right? But I stood there and then I'm like, I can't tell this woman that, oh, the date, like this is my first time. Do you know what I mean? Here's my notebook with the fucking meanings in it. But no, I couldn't feel like that, right? So I was like, oh, I've been reading cards. And because she said cards, right, I was like, oh, I've been reading cards for like over like 15 years and that, nearly like 20 years at that time, eh? And she's like, oh yeah, like you're really good, you can tell and all that. I'm like, yeah, whatever. So yeah, and I think that sometimes in that, right, is that I always tell my tarot students that story and stuff, right? And it's not so much like to do with like, oh, you should learn Lenormand or like anything like that. But I think it's that like divination systems is sort of like presenting themselves at the right time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Anytime I've went out of my way to like try to learn a divination system, just out of like curiosity or something, it's never really clicked for me. Do you know what I mean? Like straight away, but then it'll like click at the right time. So even like crystal ball divination, I forced myself to sort of like learn that because I thought it was like quite cool and stuff. But it never really like clicked for me till like years later, and I think it's because it wasn't like the right time. Do you know what I mean? It's like they present themselves at the right time.
Yeah, we've had all this time off, and I still have several books behind me here that are, astrology for dummies and beginner astrology, and it's not the right time. And I actually think that it's coming close to the right time for me to learn Lenormand. So I actually have a similar story with palm reading. So I started reading palms grade 7, grade 8. So I was about, 11, 12, 13, just reading palms on the playground. But I hadn't done it since. And a friend of mine on Facebook said, hey, I need a palm reader for an event on Saturday. Is somebody available? And I'm like, I know how to read palms, or at least I have. And I ended up like buying a book and cramming and learning palmistry in like a few days again, because I hadn't done it since I was a kid, and did the event and rocked it. And so yeah, technically I've been reading palms since I was 12 years old, but I hadn't done it.
I found like with my shirts and stuff, right, the ones that jump right into it, and I always, right, all the new tarot readers, right, I'm like that. As soon as you get your deck, man, right, like try to get experience as soon as possible, because if you get that, and it doesn't have to be paid experience, right? Most people don't have the confidence to do a paid fucking reading when they first start performing like a system of divination or that. A lot of people aren't confident. But I'm like, if you get any form of experience just reading like your pals or like your family members or whatever, I'm like, you can get over that. Whereas like I have some students that they've left it so long that you know, all the anxiety overdoing it is like totally settled in, and it's like fucking like crippling them. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, you know what? Like your intuition and that, like it fucking pulls it out the bag, man. You know what I mean? It's like it pulls it out the bag, and you can do it. Do you know what I mean? Like try not to even expect. Even before a reading, there's been some readings, right, that I've been absolutely fucking shitting myself, right, before I've went in there, and they've been amazing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what was I even worried about that for? Sometimes you can't even gauge how the reading's going to go, man. You just have to go in there and do it.
I agree.
That's
you
it.
just kind of, you know, decide that you're going to go, you're going to do your best, and however it turns out, it turns out. And I think that that's really a good attitude to have, because then we're not like, you know, I'm the best tarot reader ever, and you know, and then you end up falling on your face. Like you just kind of go into it and let it happen. I believe that the rules that we give ourselves about tarot come true. So I don't give myself any rules. So some people are like, I have to be in person, and with the COVID, like, you know, I've done distance reading, so I don't have to be in person. Some people are like, oh, I have to store my cards like this, or I have to do this, or I have to like connect with my deck, or like my rules, if I do events, are don't put me under a speaker, and I need shade because I sunburn really easily, and I don't want to have to yell over a speaker. Other than that, I can read tarot like anytime, anywhere, any place. You give me a deck, let's go. And
I'm really funny with the rules, right? And I say this to my students quite a lot as well, right? I'm like, you know what? If you start to put a lot of rules on yourself, right, regarding like reading tarot and even like ethics and stuff like that, right? Sometimes people hide behind that so that they don't have to have that type of experience, or because they're assuming that that type of reading is going to be hard for them, and so they sort of hide behind their ethics as a way to avoid it. Do you know what I mean? And honestly, man, even like, or even just saying, oh, I can't read in person, or I have to do this like before a reading and stuff like that. People do have like little rituals and stuff that they pick up that they feel more comfortable in, things like performing a reading, but sometimes that can really go against you, because you can hide behind that as a way of not putting yourself in situations where you would need to perform a reading under those circumstances. And I think that that's why I'm funny with the whole like ethics thing, right? Because sometimes, I have found that if I sort of question myself, or if I say like, oh, these are like this ethic and this is that ethic or whatever, I've tended to find that they do end up getting tested a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Or like I'll end up in the situations that I don't want to be in, just to see, they're like, you know what, we're just going to fucking see. Do you know what I mean? Let's fucking see with you what you're going to do in this situation. Do you know what I mean? But there's some things that, say like, for example, right, discussing people's readings with other people, right? That's one thing. I'm really funny with things like that, right? I wouldn't do that. Like, say, like if I performed a reading for someone, I'm not going to be like to my sister, oh, by the way, I just performed Julie's reading and guess what she's doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't do things like that.
And it's about being a professional, like being a professional. Confidentiality is super important. And I think like my rule is I'm always honest, but I want to leave them better than how I found them. And that was something I learned from my teacher. So I don't just say, some people don't do health readings. I'm okay doing health readings in private. I don't do them in public because if I'm giving like a really serious reading, I'd like to be able to, you know, spend time with the person. But I've never told someone, okay, you're going to die. Bye. See ya. Like, what's the point? And so I do two types of readings, really. Like I do the readings for healing, which I do with clients and I'm kind of working with them. And then sometimes on my channel, I do celebrity readings. And so I don't do celebrity readings for minors. So like, trying to think of a famous kid, but yeah, I wait till they turn 18 before I would do a public reading on them for entertainment. I have read for, like, I'll read for minors, and sometimes I ask parents permission and sometimes I don't. Like, I did an event once and there was a young person who came in who was really struggling with a lot of stuff, and it actually turned out that they went to high school with my daughter. So I talked with this young person, and you know, they kind of just needed someone to talk to. So I didn't end up charging them for the reading, but I'm not going to, like, you know, call their parents in that instance, because I think they were like 16, 17. So, and you were a mom at that age, so, and
yeah,
I was.
I had a 2-year-old when I was 17, so it's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
So,
And,
you know,
and honest to God, right, like, fucking, I met this one woman online one time, and she was fucking adamant, right, that kids shouldn't be reading tarot, right? That was one of our rules, you know what I mean, right? She's like, oh, kids shouldn't read tarot, never even mind getting a reading, right, but they shouldn't be reading tarot. And someone tagged me in it, right? And then I'm like, listen, man, like, it's brought nothing but good fucking things to me. Do you know what I mean? I'm like there's I can honestly say I can't think of anything that I can think about that I'm like, oh, that's caused this thing to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sort of talking to her. She's like, well, and she basically said something to the effect of that my mum was wrong for letting me read tarot, right? And I'm like, bitch, fuck you, right? So I'm sort of like having it out with this woman. And, you know, it was then I sort of thought to myself, I think that sometimes, right, and people have to be really fucking aware of this, right, when you're performing divination, any system of divination, I can really tell the type of upbringing that someone's had based on the things that they say, even if they are, like, say, pagan as fuck or, like, liberal as fuck or whatever. Some of the little things that people say, especially when it comes to things like that, it makes me think I'm like, you're still thinking with that like dogma fucking mindset. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because I wasn't brought up like that, right, I can see it really easily. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I don't think that they can see it. And I'm like and I say to her, man, I'm like, listen, I says, by saying things like that, you're giving off this impression that tarot is evil. And she's like, why would I believe that when I am this like certified tarot reader fucking and all that, right? And I'm like, but then why not let children read it? Like, if you don't believe that, if you honestly don't believe that, I'm like, then why not let children read it? Do you know what I mean? It's like, you're like, to an extent, I'm like, when you say things like that, man, you are giving off this impression of there is something dangerous, there's something wrong about like like an alternative like spiritual journey or fucking like whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're basically saying that if you're like, listen, children shouldn't read tarot, or you shouldn't like read children, or I understand why people would get parents' permission, right? Especially if you live in places where where people tend to be quite religious or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Because I would never do that, right? I'm not going to go and hunt down some like Christian kids and be like, come and get a tarot reading so I can obstruct your mind or whatever, you know what I mean? Because like, I wouldn't want someone pushing their spiritual beliefs or like religious beliefs on my daughter, so I'm not going to do that to someone else. Do you know what I mean?
And I used to read, I used to read tarot in my home, and in my old house I had a tarot room, and I also had a rule that when it came to meeting with clients, I wanted a parent or guardian there if I had a minor as a client, and that's really just for liability. Like, I don't want to be accused of something. So, and yeah, with the like the entertainment readings for child celebrities, I think that's also like a privacy thing that I just want to make sure that, because if someone's parent puts them into, you know, Hollywood acting or whatever when they're a kid, they don't have the choice about that. But when they're an adult, if they still want to continue in that line of work, I think that's a different story.
I think that like you have what's her face, right? Is it Gwyneth Paltrow, and her daughter Apple's about the same age as my daughter Candice, right? And she had said something she'd commented something on social media about her mum like posting pictures of her or like something like that she didn't want her mum to do that. And there's a couple of celebrities in the UK as well that they don't want their parents posting about them, like or even like on that the Real Housewives and that, is it Tamra, her daughter, she's like really against her mum posting things about her or talking about her on the show and stuff. So I do think you have, and my daughter is like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's how I never talk about like my daughter I'll talk about her in like general terms or that, but I don't post like pictures of her online or anything like that. And that had started round about the time that I'd started blogging. So you're talking nearly fucking 10 years ago, because my daughter had says to me, she's like, I don't want people seeing pictures of me. Do you know what I mean? She's like, I don't want any of that. My daughter's like an older teenager. My daughter's nearly 16, but she doesn't use social media or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? She has created like fan accounts for like, say, the things that she's interested in. Like, she likes like BTS, and she likes like marine animals and environmental stuff and things like that. She likes things like that, but they don't have her face on them. if someone from her school finds her account, she blocks the person. Like, she absolutely hates things like that. And I would never do that to like my daughter. So I think that, the whole like reading children in public and stuff, it's like, like children can decide if they're like, I don't really want to be a public figure. Do you know what I mean? So,
and my daughter, she's kind of become a bit of an influencer herself. She's 20, and she posts her art, and so she'll post like a drawing of her face, but she doesn't want me posting like her, pictures of her. And like, if you think about it, with all the facial recognition technology, like you put a picture of your kid online and that's going to follow them forever. So we do need to be careful with that. I was going to say, I had Christiana Godet on the show not too long ago, and she said that tarot is very dangerous and you need to be very careful with tarot, because last week she got a paper cut. So you need to be very careful with tarot. But it's ink and cardstock. There's nothing, evil or naughty about it. It's really just a language. And we need to stop being afraid of ink and cardboard or ink and cardstock, because it's dangerous. You can get a paper cut.
Yeah, I think that. See, I don't know. I'm a bit funny with like the whole like cardstock thing and stuff, because I think that a lot of tarot readers, a lot of their problems arise from the fact that they don't take like their practice like seriously and stuff. So I do tend to stay away from the whole, that's how people can, like they perform reading after reading on the same matter, because they don't really take their reading seriously and stuff. So Makes sense. Like, I do think that to an extent, right, you need to like respect your cards as like a sacred object, or as an object that you use. So I would never say about my cards, like they're just cards or whatever, because to me they're not. Do you know what I mean? Like, to me that's like a fucking like thingy, you know what I mean? So I tend to stay away from that. But then I also do believe that like the power, especially when it comes to like intuition or any of that shit, the power isn't in the tools. Do you know what I mean? It's in you and your development as a reader. And 99% of accurate readings is the shit that you're doing when you're not performing readings. Do you know what I mean? Like your development when you're not given readings, as opposed to the actual system. But then in saying that, some systems, man, like there's some systems of divination that they just speak to the person can perform the reading. And I've met people that they can't read tarot. They've tried, do you know what I mean? But they're like, you know what, this system of divination just isn't for me. But they're talented in like another area, or say like astrology or some shit like that. Or even like I've met Lenormand readers that can't read tarot, but they've tried. Do you know what I mean? So and for me, it's like when the deck comes in the mail, it's just ink and cardstock. And the more I work with the deck, then it kind of develops its own personality. So the term egregore, of something taking on a life of its own, I think that's kind of what happens when you work with the deck. So, my first deck is a trusted friend. I would not say that that's just ink and cardstock. But if I, get a pretty new, I collect decks. So if I get a pretty new one in the mail, then that's just ink and cardstock. That's the way that I see it and stuff. I used to like sort of, I wouldn't necessarily call myself like a deck collector. Well, you know what? If someone looked in the cupboard, they would say that I was. But I think that sometimes as well, people can feel a bit like pressured to like collect decks, like to tarot readers and stuff. I think that's like a bit of a thing as well on like Facebook and stuff. Yeah. Like people, I think that there is like a limit. Do you know what I mean? I think that like my sister, right, for example, right, my sister, she's really, really big on the whole like connecting to your deck and primary deck and stuff like that. And I used to, I am like that, right? I have a primary deck. That's the deck I use for reading. That's it. Do you know what I mean? And my primary deck that I've got now, I've never even photographed it. Do you know what I mean? Like for social media or anything like that. You know what I mean? My primary deck. But my sister is like that, but to an extreme. Like she won't have any other deck other than a primary deck. Do you know what I mean? And she is against, in a way, collecting decks. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, that's a bit strange and stuff. But she's like, oh, she has this fear. She's like, oh, if I start collecting decks, I'll stop taking like my primary deck as like serious or whatever. So I think people are different when it comes to how they use like tools or whatever. And sometimes it does just depend on the person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I have somewhere between 20 and 30 decks. But
I have about that.
There's probably, there's my primary deck is Sierra Marchetti's Gilded Tarot, the Easy Tarot. And I still go back to that. I have several copies of that deck simply because I've worn out several decks, and the best thing about that deck is the super vibrant colors. So, yeah, there's been a few decks that they've gotten so worn out that I've just bought like the same one again, and so I think I have like 3 or 4 of that one just because I've used it so much. But yeah, I went to art school a million years ago, and so I love the art of decks. I love, I have so many ideas for decks, like pop culture decks. I, for years, wanted to do a Supernatural deck, the TV show, and I kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And I was in a bookstore within the last few months, and I saw somebody else got to it before me, so I better get on these other decks. Like, I want to do a Star Trek one. I want to do a How I Met Your Mother one. I want to do another Lord. I know there is a Lord of the Rings one. I want to do another one because I just love the artwork, and I think the next one I want is the dog tarot. It's super cute, and so like all of the cards are different breeds of dogs, and and like so the page is the puppy, so like the puppy of wands, and and I'm a dog person, so
I feel like for a lot of people, I think people collect decks for different reasons. I think that like you do get arty people that they love the art and like stuff like that. I have some decks that are collectible decks. So say like one of my decks was one of the first decks to be published. Well, it was the first deck to be published in Bulgaria, and there was 500 copies of that deck, and I own one of the decks. So that's obviously got like historical value to it. Do you know what I mean? But and I have like just different types of decks that do have like historical value and stuff like that. But I think that one thing that I remember, right, and I don't know if it's just like my age or whatever, but when I was younger, when I first like came onto like Instagram and stuff like that, like with my divination and things, I started to feel, and I hate to say this, right, because I'm just not even this type of fucking person, man, right? But I started to feel a lot of like social pressure and stuff to maybe like, oh, you need to have like different decks to like make your account look more interesting, or fucking like to post like nicer pictures or whatever. And I grew out of that real fucking quick, right? But I do see that sometimes like with my students, when I'm talking to them when they first start to learn like reading tarot or whatever, they'll say things like, oh, well, I'm trying to advance my tarot journey, so I've went and bought all of these decks just to like look at the artwork. And I'm sort of like, well, that doesn't really sometimes I feel like people can fall into the habit of buying different decks because they think it's a replacement for real experience. Do you know what I mean by that? They think that, oh, if I buy this deck, it's like experience, and then it's like, no, like save your money and go out and read like 10 fucking people. Do you know, even if it's just in Facebook groups or whatever, you know what I mean? I'm like, that's more experience than looking like than having decks that you're just going to put them in the drawer and fucking forget about them. Do you know what I mean?
I look at tarot as being like a language, and it kind of feels like, you know, trying to learn a new language with buying all sorts of different translation dictionaries and then never reading them. Like it just doesn't make sense. So we have a question. Marissa, Emily, I saw that you, or Emma, sorry. Emma, I saw you come in. Hello. I wasn't ignoring you, just caught up in conversation. Okay. How do I feel about people who buy decks and then frame them as art? Personally, I think it's fabulous. I think that if you love the art and you want to enjoy it on your wall, then you can do so. That doesn't bother me or offend me at all.
I have a bit of a story connected to this, right? So when I was younger, my cousin died in his sleep when he was like 31 or something. He was like quite young. And me and my cousin, we were like really close. Do you know what I mean? Like really close. And at the time, I'd just got out of this like relationship, and he'd just like split up with like his ex and stuff. So me and him were, even though there was a bit of an age difference between us, we were like going out all the time and like, yeah, and everything, right? And he just died suddenly. He just went to bed, and he had like bronchitis, but they call it like silent pneumonia, where he never had any symptoms or anything like that. He just went to bed and died. Do you know what I mean? And I was, at the time, I was sort of like really stressed out like over my career and stuff. And I look back now and I think it's like I was on this cusp, right? I was on this cusp of like my career taking off and me giving up. Do you know what I mean? Well, not giving up, but like, you know what I mean? Like whatever. And I started to receive these signs, right? Like 10 of Cups and stuff. I started to see the 10 of Cups everywhere, right? Absolutely everywhere. I kept on seeing this 10 of Cups. And I went down to in the UK, we have something called like TarotCon, right? So I went down to that. And at the time I was like 24 or something like that. And honestly, that was the first time I'd ever went anywhere without a relative, right? Because in like Romani culture, right, we don't go anywhere alone. And I don't think I've been anywhere on my own fucking since then. Do you know what I mean? Without like either one of my family members or one of like my fiance's family members. But at the time, I went down there and it was really like, it really fucked me up mentally because I'm like, oh, I hated, like, it was so strange being on my own and everything like that. And then I sort of started to realise that like these 10 of Cups was like associated like with my cousin and stuff like that. Like I dreamed about him and I dreamed about these like 10 of Cups and stuff. And then it was his birthday while I was down at TarotCon. And when I was sitting there, the creator of the Alice Tarot deck, Karen, she gave me it was just like extras, you know, like when they done like the print run and that of like the tarot deck and things. She went and gave me like 3 cards that had been, and she gave them to everyone, but they were just like random, you know, like extra like print copies and things.
Yeah.
And one of the cards was like the 10 of Cups that she just so happens to like give to me, and I was like, wow. And I have that framed now, and it's like framed up the stairs. I still need to hang it up again because like I took it down, but I'm going to hang it up and I have that framed. So yeah, I'm like for it. Do you know what I mean? Like you get some people that are a bit superstitious about that. I don't know why. People are weird, but yeah, I would totally if you're into it, and especially if the card has special like significance to you, then yeah, I would frame things like that.
Yeah, and there's times when you have to retire a deck. Like sometimes if one card goes missing, or if like one card gets, you know, damaged or ripped, so you can tell which one it is, and you have to retire the deck. And I think that's one thing that you can do with it is enjoy the art. I have a friend who, and I've tried to buy it off of her, and she says, nope, not over my dead body. Maybe I'll get it in her will. But she has one of those folding screens, and it was it has like grids. I don't know if I'm describing it, but the grid is the exact same size as a tarot deck. And so she has like the 78 cards all put out through the folding screen. So I love that idea. And so I've kind of been looking for one that's like that. And so I can put my own, and she just has like it's either a Marseille or a, just your basic weight Smith deck. And, but it's so pretty and it looks so Victorian and I love it. And yeah, that was kind of over my dead body. I'm never ever parting with this. She loves that thing. So yeah, I another way to deal with a deck is you can gift the card to someone. If you can display it or you can gift it. Like I got a Christmas card years ago from somebody, and she put the Empress in the Christmas card because that card reminded her of me. So I thought that was a really
tell my students, especially like my professional students and stuff, I'm like, sometimes it's good to give like your clients things to like remember you by. Like there's marketing reasons behind it, but sometimes it's like just a good thing to do. And that's one of the things I tell them to do is like to give them like a card deck or like a card, and then they'll leave it around their house or whatever. And then sometimes they can even start to associate that with a sign or whatever, you know what I mean? If they've got like the moon card, then they start seeing like the moon symbol everywhere and like their ancestral spirits are like talking to them and shit, you know what I mean? So sometimes it works for them, do you know what I mean, as well? So yeah, I'll tell them to do things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of creative things you can do. And also you can use them in magic as anchors. So like trying to just think of an example. So yeah, if you were looking for a job, you can put the 8 of Pentacles in your wallet, and that might be like a you know, help you get a job. Different things like that. So what are some ways that, because we've got 16 minutes left, I usually try to keep my streams at an hour, and the topic of the talk is developing your intuition. So is there anything that you can talk about with developing your intuition, not just with tarot, but about some of the other systems that we've mentioned?
I think that the best way to develop intuition is always to observe signs, like signs from your ancestral spirits and stuff like that. That's like number one. right? Because a lot of the time, people that they want to develop like their intuition or like their psychic abilities or whatever, they have like a conscious one for it. So say they're like, right, I want to get better at readings, I want to do this, I want to do that. But subconsciously, they might be a bit like apprehensive because they're scared of spirits, or they're just like nervous round about spirits, or maybe they don't understand like signals from their auras properly, and that makes them think that they're scared of spirits. So all these different things can go on. And if you're sending out that subconscious signal, spirits can hear it. They're like, oh, well, this person doesn't want me to communicate with them, or they don't want even people, right? That... What?
You're buffering a little bit.
All right, sorry. I think it was probably I think it's the wind outside. But
okay.
I think sometimes even people that they've not been brought up to fear spirits or that, they can have that subconscious like fear of connecting with spirits and things like that. So I always think that if you observe signs, that is like a way that you can develop this spiritual connection without having to go down like other routes or whatever, because by you observing signs and saying to yourself, right, this is a sign and spirit is sending me this sign, you are giving out like your signal to the spirits, oh, by the way, I want to be in communication with you, I want to work with you, you can approach me in like other ways. Do you know what I mean? So I always feel like that is the best way for you to start to build up like your spiritual connection, is by like observing these signs and stuff like that. And here's the thing as well, is that a lot of the time you have to prove it to yourself. A big part of intuition is trusting your intuition, and sometimes you don't have that unless you prove to yourself that spirit is always around you and you can communicate with them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So so say like, for example, and stuff, like if you see a sign and if you're questioning, oh, is this really a sign, you can always ask for confirmation of that sign. Like there's nothing saying that you can't.
And I think writing it down is a good idea too, so then you can go back and track things. So if you saw a sign, like it's a lot like learning the difference between what your voice sounds like your intuition voice, and your ego voice. And
2 seconds, I need to let my cat out because he's crying and it's so sad.
Okay,
what were you saying?
Like learning the difference between your intuition and your ego. And so if you think that something is your intuition, of writing it down and then checking back later, like, did this happen? Was this true? Or was this me just wanting this to think that it was intuition? And I think that's
sometimes as well, right? One thing that really works. Here, Luce, here. He's disappeared and now he's licking his mouth. Now I'm worried about what he's got. But sometimes, oh, I think he's killed a spider. Sometimes I think as well, right, when it comes to the whole like writing things down and recording things and stuff like that, it sort of cements it in your intuition that it happened the way that you thought that it happened. Do you know what I mean by that? So one thing that happens to me, right, was I kept on getting these reoccurring dreams, right? And these dreams were that I was like walking down this alleyway, or whatever, well, not an alleyway, right? Like say like on a bridge in a really hot place, right? Kept on getting this dream, and I would come to this wall that was like this blue wall, and it had like lions on it and stuff like that. Now this was like proper fucking realistic dream, right? And I wrote the dream down. Right, I'm like, right, I'm going to write this dream down, and I still have it up the stairs. That's when I was like 17, and I've still got the notebook with it fucking written down, right? And I'm not even really one for writing down readings or that, but this was really like something, so I wrote it down.
Yeah.
And then
hold on, I need to plug in my laptop.
Yeah. And then like I was telling my auntie about it, right? And then as I was telling her about it, the fucking thing that I'd been seeing in my dream, and I described it, I was like, oh, it's like this blue thing, it's like a gate, it's like these lions on it, blah blah. And as I was describing it to her, it fucking came on TV, and I'm like, there's the thing, there's the fucking thing there. It turns out it was like Ishtar's gate, you know, like from Babylon and stuff like that. It was that's what I kept on like dreaming about and stuff. So I think that sometimes writing it down, or even just like the act of telling other people, that's just extra confirmation for yourself, because then other people are like, holy shit, like that's really something, you know?
Yeah. So we do have another question.
Yeah.
Shermer asks, there you go. If I had a type of intuition that words are just hard today. If I had a type of intuition that was person related, a close connection with a childhood friend through life, or knowing when a friend was pregnant before her, can that be developed? And there's a few other parts of this question, so I'll just read them one time. I always through life knew when my friend was going through something big job change, death in the family, sadness, happiness. I finally had a dream and I woke crying, and he was in hospice. He didn't tell me. Oh, that's so sad. I have thoughts on this. I knew and he didn't want to tell me he was dying, but I knew, and I was able to see him before, but it was like that throughout our lives. We met when we were 2 years old. That's a really touching story, and to me, that seems like there's a past life, not just a past life connection, but a soulmate connection. And we always think that soulmates, like we think of it as being romantic, but sometimes it's just like a soul friend of someone who's supposed to be with you in your life, and there's just this connection. And sometimes it can be like, Thelma and Louise, or Han Solo and Chewbacca, or Samwise and Frodo. These just like really close bonds, and you do develop.
I'm quite interested
these connections, and
because she's asked about like the whole is there a way like to develop it and stuff. I'm curious if she's had those experiences with other people, or if this is the only person that she's had those experiences with. Yeah, she's saying, is that something that can be developed in other ways, such as with tarot? I definitely do think so, but I'm just curious if she's had those experiences with other people, because it could just be that there's some people that we meet and we can read them very easily, right? Yeah. And it's not for any like soulmate reason or anything like that. It could be, right? But sometimes it's not for that. It's just that there's just some people that we meet as readers or as psychics or whatever, and we just can read that person really well. Do you know what I mean? And you get that not even just with people that you meet in like your real life, but even like clients. There's some clients that you meet, but that's not just true in like the divination industry. That's true in like every fucking industry, right? So even like take like a makeup artist. There's some people that makeup artists meet that they can just make them amazing. Do you know what I mean? And then there's other ones that they're just absolute shit because they don't have that connection on that level for whatever reason. Do you know what I mean? And I think that happens with readers as well. But I think that there's a couple of different things that she's describing. I think that in some respects, I do think like the ability to like predict the death and like the pregnancy and stuff like that, that's more like a precognitive ability. So that's like the prediction ability. But then there's also like knowing how someone's feeling. That's more an empathetic ability. And ideally, to perform readings, you would have to learn tarot and stuff. You would have, they're probably the two skills that you probably need is like precognition, the ability to predict, but then also like the ability to read someone's like thoughts and feelings and things. You can get along, right? You can bob along without knowing one or the other, depending on the style of readings that you perform, right? So for example, people are going to think I'm a complete cunt, right, when I say this, right? But I'm not a very empathetic person, right? Naturally, the whole gift of empathy is not my strong point. Do you know what I mean by that? I'm not very good on picking up people's... Yeah, I'm not good on picking up people's feelings, their motives, their intentions, things like that. But I can like predict events. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes like throughout my life, right, sometimes people have had really shitty intentions, and I've sort of been able to predict that it's going down that road. But because I've never picked up on it like on an empathetic level, I've just sort of went along with it, because I've sort of been like, right, just questioning like, well, I have no reason to think that this is going to happen, so let's just go along with this kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But then it's happened. So do you know what I mean? I think people tend to assume that people that work as readers or psychics or whatever, they assume that they have empathetic ability, but that's not always necessarily true. Do you know what I mean? Like empathy is a psychic ability, which not all people have.
Yeah, totally. And for me, like I'm autistic, and so part of autism is often like difficulty picking up on other people's emotions. So it's very trendy to kind of identify yourself as an empath, and I see a lot of people just doing that, and they say like, I'm an empath. I read body language. I look at tone of voice. And I'm like, that's what we call cold reading. So if you're looking at somebody's body language and calling yourself an empath, I'm going to say no. But so I have issues with like picking up on what someone's intentions are. I'm really crappy at it. And that's why I started reading tarot, because I didn't understand people.
Yeah, my daughter's autistic, and there's some things that you've got to question, right? You're like, is that coming from her autism, or is that coming from like an intuition thing? Because there's some people that she meets she's like, I just do not like her, right? Or I just do not like him. And it can be for a specific reason. So say, for example, she's always arguing with one of my sisters because my sister's quite sarcastic. Do you know what I mean? She's always got like a fly backhanded comment to make. That's just the kind of person that she is. And my daughter fucking hates that, right? She's like, what is her drift? She finds it hard to discern what she means. Do you know what I mean? Because she's like, you're saying that, but I know that you mean something differently. And my daughter hates that shit, man, right? But then there's other people that she just connects with. But then there's people that she'll just hate for like no reason. So sometimes, and I think as well, like autistics have that extra challenge, because then that's something that they can say to themselves, am I feeling this way because I'm autistic, or am I feeling this way because it's something? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I find that sometimes, like, some people say that it's the lack of social skills or the lack of awareness, but I think sometimes it's that I'm too sensitive, so I shut down. It's just so overwhelming that I just go to feeling nothing. And
my daughter's really sensitive. Like, she will pick up on, because my daughter is high functioning, but I hate to say this, right, but there's no really any other way to say it, right? She's high functioning, but she's quite bad for being like high functioning. She was quite young when she got diagnosed with like autism and stuff, because it was affecting her life and things like that. But I feel like she is oversensitive. She picks up on things. So even like, say, like, well, my sister or whoever, she picks up on little things that they say, do you know what I mean, that aren't matching the way that they're presenting themselves. Do you know what I mean? So she's like, and that can make her dislike people. Do you know what I mean? Because she's like, I can sense that there's something not quite fucking right. But I think that one of the reasons as well is that it confuses her. Do you know what I mean? She's like, I don't understand what your drift is, where you're coming from, because you're saying one thing, but the way that you're presenting yourself is like completely different. Do you know what I mean? So even
there's something not matching up here.
Yeah, so even she'll pick up on.
And I think now a lot of autistics are going away from the high functioning, low functioning thing, because people are like, oh, if you're high functioning, then you're not really bothered by your autism, or if you're low functioning, then you don't really have potential. So now they're talking about it in terms more of support. So I would be a low support autistic person. So I mean, like a high support autistic person would be someone who has trouble going to the bathroom by themselves, has trouble dressing themselves, has trouble with language, can't open a bank account by themselves. But me as a low support, like, I bathe and shower myself. I just, I need help with social skills. So that's kind of how the language is changing. And I think that makes a lot more sense, because
I think it depends as well what country you live in, right? Because in the UK, my daughter will be classed as an adult in only like a matter of weeks. Do you know what I mean? But there is no way that she is an adult. And they actually sent me out a letter to say like, oh, like, are you still like wanting to be like her like guardian kind of thing, because she can't do things on her own, like go to the bank, other things. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's just she can't do a lot of things like on her own. Do you know what I mean? So even like when she's
kind of like mid-support.
Yeah, when she was assessed for like her age and things, when she was like 8, they said that she was like a 2-year-old back then. Do you know what I mean? So, and God knows what she is now, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think it does really depend on support. But it's quite funny because like I do actually meet quite a lot of autistic people that are readers. Like, I do seem to come across quite a lot of autistic readers. It's funny because like my daughter, I always had like, I thought that my children would grow up to be readers, right? I would just like, right, they'll grow up to be readers. But my daughter, she has a really strong interest in astrology, that's her thing. She has like a strong interest in astrology, but she doesn't view tarot as being something that she wants to learn, because she views me as being like an old fucking woman, right? So she's like, I'm not doing that. Do you know what I mean? She's like, I want to do astrology. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I bought my daughter. I bought my daughter a deck when she was, oh gosh, maybe 10 or 11, and she just had no interest in it. It's just not her thing, and that's fine. You know, cooler if you did. But yeah, she tends to be a little more agnostic. And why is my phone going off? Where is my phone? I hear it. Hang on. I hope I don't end up with a copyright strike for having a song on my video now. Okay, so where can so you have your book coming out? It's Modern Oracle, you said?
Yeah, the Modern Oracle. And the last time that I checked,
October, November.
Yeah, the last time that I checked on Amazon, it was saying that the book was going to be shipped on the 5th of October. So I think that might be, I know that there has been, my publisher told me they told me last week that there'd been 12,000 copies printed, but over 1,000 of them were like gone already. Do you know what I mean? So I think that might be one of the reasons why like the date's been like pushed back kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Because like, and I have been trying to encourage people to pre-order the book, because that happened on like Amazon UK and stuff. Like the book kept going like, oh, it will be available like next week or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, shipping and I don't know if you're finding this, but I am finding like every reading I've given for the last year and a half, I end up using the words because COVID. And I'm really looking forward to a day when I'm not saying that anymore. But yeah, because COVID, everything's messed up. But I will absolutely be pre-ordering your book, and I will be giving a link in the description when I update this to give you that. And your website, if someone wanted to find you, where would they find you?
Divinerism.com.
Okay. You said Divinerism?
Okay. Yeah. I did. My main website is Divination and Fortune Telling, but that's on I built that website on like a platform that it doesn't handle the amount of traffic that I get. So my divinationfortunetelling.com gets like over 1 million visitors a year. And so it totally slowed the site. So now we need to move to like a bigger platform and stuff. So yeah. But basically anyway, if they just come on, sign up to my newsletter. What?
Okay, yeah, for sure. You said that you have a YouTube channel as well that you've started, right?
Yeah, I started my YouTube channel about 5 weeks ago, so we're doing all right. My YouTube channel is called Lisa Boswell. Well, the address is Lisa Boswell TV.
And
that's the YouTube address.
Is your YouTube channel under Lisa?
Huh?
I'm sorry. I'll let my mods link it, because if I try to pull up YouTube, then it'll lag because I have no RAM on this. So yes, my mods are just the best. So I'll just let you know that. So yeah, if mods can look up Lisa's channel and post that, and then if you could please subscribe to Lisa's channel. It's a brand new channel. It's only 5 weeks old, and I will be subscribing as well. And you can show her some love and get her monetized. That would be awesome. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. I've learned so much from you, and I've really had a great time today. I'm really glad that we were finally able to connect. Okay, apparently there were mic issues when you were saying the name of your channel. So if you could give us the channel name again, please.
The address is Lisa Boswell TV. That's the address. The name's just Lisa Boswell.
Lisa Boswell TV. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we'll post that, and yeah. So if you could give Lisa's channel some love. Thank you so much for joining us. Love to your daughter, and yeah, I am. Someday I will get to Scotland. I will get over the Atlantic, and yeah, we'll go have a beer or something. So I look forward to that day. Thank you again to my mods. Yay! I have amazing mods. I am so awesome I am so thankful for my awesome mods. Thank you for my viewers. I appreciate you so much. And so everybody take care. Please get vaccinated. And we'll see you.
Good night. Bye.
Later. Bye, pumpkins.